paddle, 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 paddle all the way.
Hello, welcome back to 340 Paddler, and today we're talking about, well, Litke's foibles, or at least another chapter of them. And what I want to do is look at my race in 2012. This was my rookie year, and I need to give you a little bit of background for what we were walking into. 2012 is probably the hottest year that has ever happened for the 340. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all 4 days hit triple digits. We were also on a very low river. My average speed was on the river up to 6 early on, but otherwise in the 5s, to give you some idea of where we were. So let's use that as a basis, and what I want to do is walk you through what happened in my rookie year, how I finished in 78 hours, and what I did wrong, so that hopefully you can learn from it. So I walked in here having registered in 2010. Of course, that got postponed and I couldn't race. Same in 2011 when I built this boat. 2012 comes around. I've been reading the forums for 2 years. Facebook isn't really a thing for the race, so it's not important. And I'm off to the races. I figure I've got a lot of great ideas. Pool noodles on the side of the boat. I'm drinking Gatorade because it's got electrolytes. The stuff plants crave. Sorry, wrong movie. I've got the paddle, I've got the bag, I've got the boat. This is great. And I'm sitting there at Caw Point just like everyone else, except I'm really hoping a meteor strikes or something because I can't really get my head around what I'm about to do. So there we are. We're at the start and eventually we're off, not moving nearly that fast. My first issue is going to be sunburn. See, I had put on sunscreen at Caw Point. My wife / ground crew was kind enough to slather it all over me, and that was fantastic. Except that apparently sunscreen wears off, and so by the time I got to Lexington, well, things were in bad shape. I had burned pretty badly. I got to Lexington about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a 7 a.m. start, so that gives you some idea of how long it takes me. It took me 8 hours to hit Lexington that first year, even in the cool boat. So I'm sunburned and miserable, and now I will sunscreen throughout the race. Afterwards, I will start spraying myself every couple of hours and moving on, but the damage is done, as we will see. Then, after Lexington, I decided to stop eating. I had a hamburger at Lexington, everything was fine. By the time I got to Waverly, I ate 2 bites of a hamburger and called it a day. There was just no way I was going to keep food down. It was pretty bad. So, what happens is I get to Waverly, and I push off. I paddle with a couple of guys. One of them is Brett Durfer, who will play a role later on. And we get as far as Hills Island. I stop there, I relax for a little bit, I can eat a little something, but I mean, we're talking tiny amounts of food, and then I continue to Miami. The idea being, let's go ahead and sleep in Miami. I get there probably 1 or 2 in the morning, maybe a little bit later, but I believe it was around 1 or 2 in the morning. There I am sleeping next to the boat. Great times. So what was the problem? It was noisy, it was sandy, it was everything. It was really difficult to sleep. I was trying to sleep for a couple of hours. It didn't work out. And then I woke up and I had heard these great stories about the pancakes at Miami. And I will be honest, the couple of bites that I had were fantastic, but they hit my stomach like a lead balloon. And suddenly I was back to not being able to eat anything. My stomach was horrible. So as I paddled away into the pink sunrise, having nearly DNF'd at Miami because I can't hold anything down, my stomach is really nauseous. Thankfully, I took some Pepto, and that worked. I have some Pepto tablets that I carried with me, and they really saved me. I took those pretty regularly day 2 and the first half of day 3 until things calmed down. Which brings us to sunburn part 2. So here's the thing. When you burn the first time, it's bad. But as soon as that sun comes up on day 2, it is like Dracula in a tanning bed. It is horrific. And I am not known for my incredible tan, but it was painful. The sun comes up and everything hurts. It doesn't help that I was wearing a hat that probably isn't exactly appropriate. And yeah, things were problematic at the time. But that whole day, every time the sun hit me, it just hurt and burned. And there was nothing I could do to get over it. So I'm paddling towards Glasgow. I stopped at Dalton Bottoms to take a little break, get back on the water. Who should pop along but my friend, Brett Durfer. And at this point, I am absolutely hating the idea of paddling. I cannot tell you how badly I wanted to quit the race at this point. And Brett is sitting there, a font of positivity. Don't worry, man, it's just around this bend. It's just one or two more bends. I mean, no one tells you the bends are 4 miles long. Thanks, Brett, but still, I have to give him credit because he's probably the only reason that I made it past Glasgow at that point. I had it in my head because someone had posted on the forums at some point that no one ever drops after Glasgow. So if you can make Glasgow, you're probably going to finish. You're in good shape. And I banked plenty of time, but I was just miserable. The sunburn, the stomach issues, it was building up. So I pull into Glasgow and decide to sleep. And in part, my ground crew said, you're going to sleep because it's 1 p.m. You're going to sleep from 1 to 3, and hopefully you're going to fall back in the pack, but you're not going to have to be out there in the heat, and maybe that will help you recover. And so I try to sleep. This is a picture of me actually trying to sleep at Glasgow. You can kind of get a sense of sunburn. It doesn't show up as well there as it would have, with the screaming, but there I am. The problem is I couldn't sleep. It's hot. It's horrible. People are talking. There's stuff going on. And again, even though I should have had about 5 hours of sleep by the end of this, I have probably, in fact, 1. Not a good setup. So I leave. It's about 3 p.m. I'm at the tail end of the pack at this point. And I paddle through and I get to Katfish sometime around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, something in there. It took me an enormous amount of time. I didn't actually stop on my way. I was slow. And I pull in here and my ground crew has set up this beautiful tent. And this might actually be a picture of the tent at Katfish. I have no idea. I wasn't entirely, on the same planet. And I climb in, and I take off my shoes. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to sleep for 3 hours, wake me up, and we'll go. And I didn't sleep. Beautiful sleeping bag, everything else. But because I kept trying to sleep and then couldn't sleep, it creates this weird situation where I'm exhausted and yet I can't sleep. And so it was a fitful night, and I get back in the boat. By the way, my ground crew, this is the only time in 7 years that she has ever set up a tent. After this, I either sleep on the ground or I sleep in the car. Whole different issue. So I leave Katfish. Things are rough. I get to Cooper's. I left Katfish about 4 a.m, got to Cooper's around 6. I decided to lay down there for a while, tried laying down on a picnic table for an hour. Still couldn't sleep, get back in the boat, head to Jeff City, get there around, I don't know, it was probably 10:30 or so. Don't quote me on these times or ballparks. And there I found the Savior Sandwich. See, I pulled into Jeff City, which looked something like this, and I didn't have my ground crew because she was exhausted, and I didn't have anyone there, so I went and got a sandwich to try and see if I could eat something. It was a simple sausage biscuit, but it was phenomenal, and I kept it down, which was amazing because up until this point, my entire diet was bits of watermelon, probably stained with, my hopes and dreams and a little bit of river water, and Ensure. By the way, this is a great reason to carry Ensure and Boost because they probably got me to this point in the race. So I have that sandwich, and it is phenomenal, and it was a great pick-me-up. I was ready to roll out. And of course, I did. Off to Chamois. This is not me. This is also not Chamois, but it's the closest I could come. And I roll into Chamois, And for some reason, and I want to say it was Granny, famous for the ground crew book that she put together, is standing at the ramp. And I don't have a ground crew there. And she asks, what is it that she can do for me? And I say, I have no idea. Maybe a Coke. She gives me a cold can of Coke. And this was ambrosia of the gods. Amazing stuff. Probably got me to Herman. And then I get to Herman. We'll get to Pinball Wing Dykes in a second. And Herman, I have the brat and the soda, and it's great, and I'm feeling good, and I take a couple more caffeine pills because I forgot to tell you I've been taking caffeine pills during the race. Might be a reason I'm not sleeping. Another bad idea, don't do it. And I leave Herman, it's probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, with a guy named Doug, who had paddled into Herman with me. No idea who Doug is. I have to thank Doug because he probably saved my hide on more than one occasion. But we get to Burger Bend, and that's where we play Pinball Wing Dykes. You see, my idea had been to get to New Haven and go ahead and sleep there, which will be its own issue. But as we go through Burger Bend, we start, well, I, in large part, start hitting things, like a wing dike back here somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I know there was somewhere that I hit a wing dike. And then I hit the sandbar over here. How I managed to draw a line from the channel to there thinking I was in the right spot, I have no idea. But it's the one time that carp really became an issue. And then I definitely hit that wing dike there because I was totally convinced that it went all the way across the river. And I actually went between the rocks over the top of it. My boat was stuck for a short time on the wing dike. And then I'm pretty sure I hit that one. I know I hit one more on the way out. And again, was convinced that this thing goes all the way across the river. Why am I telling you this? Well, I was not in good shape at this point. I should have stopped at Herman and slept, but I didn't want to. I wanted to finish, yada, yada, yada. Let's go. This was a horrible idea. By hitting those wing dikes, I'm in a horrible mind space. I'm in a really dark place. Which brings us to New Haven. We come paddling through New Haven, and my idea is I'm just going to stop in New Haven and sleep. I don't care what happens. I don't care where I'm going to sleep. I need to get off this river. I'm going to stop at New Haven. And New Haven's a beautiful city. And it's got a beautiful ramp. It's right there. It's pretty straightforward, right? Except it's not, because in reality it looks that ramp looks something like this, and you can't tell what the heck is going on. We couldn't find it. Doug was in his right mind. I was not, and we still couldn't find it. So we ended up floating past and just floating and waiting for the next boat to come along. This was probably, again, a savior move, the sort of thing that was really brilliant in hindsight. Although I was just hoping that anyone else would help us out. Maybe with a tow rope would be nice. So that ramp, big problem, moving on. Then we have the bridge. So I'm told as we're paddling along, don't worry, we're going to get to Washington. And so we get there and I can see it, but I can't figure out what the heck is going on. Is it a barge? Is it a moon? I have no idea. I don't even know where the boat ramp is, but I am desperate to find it. And Washington has this massive bridge. At the time, it looked something like this. And it also, I believe I'm also paddling upstream as this is viewed. But anyway, it's also got a huge amount of clearance, a good 75 feet or so. And I was convinced because the way it was lit, that it was actually some kind of toll and you couldn't get under it. So I stopped and slept on a picnic table at Washington, probably 50 feet from a set of busy train tracks. Didn't bother me, just needed to sleep. So positive, sleeping, negative, massive hallucinations that make you think the 75-foot tall bridge is something that you can't possibly get under. Now, I recovered from that. And about 6 in the morning, the sun's up, I'm freezing, I'm slightly hypothermic because the jacket I threw on that night to sleep was damp. So I'm freezing. And we paddle off to Klondike. I pedal off with Doug and a couple other people. It's a very pleasant couple of hours. And then get to Klondike. There's a bunch of people cheering. We don't know what's going on. Turns out it's the River Ramble guys. And they're out there cheering because they think that we are expert paddlers. I am no expert paddler at this point. I argue that I am not at this point. But that's fine. I leave Klondike and someone says, hey, by the way, there's a barge coming up. Okay, I can do this. Not a problem. I leave Klondike and for about 2 miles I feel good and then I'm just dying out there. And the problem is this barge is coming upstream. I'll steal my pen here or use my pen. It's coming upstream here and then has to cross over because we're looking sort of at Weldon and this happens upstream of Weldon. And there's a series of sort of box-like wing dikes where I'm about to pass this barge that look something like this. And what I do is I paddle right up on the channel side, almost to the barge. And at the last second, I jump into one of these and basically stay safe. What I should point out is all the river ramblers are down here near a sandbar on the proper side of the river going, what's that idiot doing over there? So don't do that. It also ripped up my boat pretty good because I hit a couple of the rocks going in. It didn't help my mental state coming out. It was a rough deal. So, you know, one of those kind of issues. So that was playing chicken with a barge. So that was not a great idea. Now, one other thing that's going on at the time is my feet hurt. I am wearing water shoes, proper water shoes, or what I thought were proper water shoes. They were $10 water shoes, but nonetheless. And what I didn't realize is there's this thing called trench foot. I knew about it historically from World War I and Vietnam. When you study those histories and you read the soldiers' letters, you hear about this a lot. It's a horrific thing. They're in the water for months, so I'm like, yeah, this isn't really a problem. But it is. Because those are my feet when I took those shoes off. My feet burned and hurt. It hurt so bad to walk, and my heels hurt so bad just sitting in the boat. It was kind of horrific. And I apologize that these aren't the best photos, but then taking pictures of a mummy's feet aren't usually really easy to do. The easiest way to deal with this, by the way, is just change your dang shoes or keep your feet dry every time you get out of the boat. Throw on a pair of flip-flops or have a couple of different pairs of shoes. And that's what I did in the future, is I always had a spare pair. So one pair was dry with my ground crew or drying with my ground crew. The other one I'm wearing. And then about every 12 hours or so, I would swap so that I had some drier shoes. Also, anytime I stopped to sleep, I put my feet in wool socks. And it sounds ridiculous, but heavy wool socks, those big, heavy winter wool socks, wick moisture out of your feet. It's fantastic. And it has been a godsend ever since. Now, all of this is to say I did eventually make it to the finish. This is me at the finish. I had finished about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. So I'm not exactly setting any land speed records and definitely not looking incredibly fashionable. But I made it. Because every time something happened, there was something else that I could look to that would help fix the problem. And for you, hopefully hearing about this is enough that you look at it and you say, you know what? I can handle that. So do things like carry sunscreen. Make sure that you're eating throughout the race, because if you stop, your stomach will shut down. Make sure that if you are hallucinating and having a rough time, that you take a bit of a break. Could be a 20-minute nap, could be a 90-minute nap, could be longer. Because I could have gotten in serious trouble with a lot of the things I did. I don't want to see you do that. So, hopefully this is educational for you, and this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.